Oh, dope. It is recording. Okay, well, whenever.
It's recording right now.
Yeah, I know, but this is part of the funny outtakes right at the start, and people's like, ha ha ha, these guys are so funny. And then they turn off the YouTube video.
That's exactly what they're going to think. Yeah.
Or the audio. Anyway, let's kick it off. This is the first ever. Well, yeah, no, it is the first ever. This was a horrible start, too. It's the first ever podcast of The Breakdown with James, who's on that side of me, and Ollie. I'm Ollie. He's James. This is possibly the worst introduction ever. Not that I'm nervous, but it's just been it's been a long day. It's been a long day. Anyway,
I mean, you are classically trained for this, so I mean, no pressure.
Classically. So this is what we're going to do. James and I have been talking about starting a podcast for what? Since grade 10, maybe?
Probably.
Before podcasts were really a cool thing. So we were obviously on the cutting edge of getting the podcast systems moving in the world. But what we're going to do now is that we're finally both kind of working, but not really, kind of school, but not really. We're going to be doing a podcast once a week. We're going to be talking about everything to do with sports that we can be bothered to talk about. So really, it's going to be quite a small list. But don't worry, it's not only sports. We're going to have some really fun competitions that James doesn't know about. And yeah, no, that's about it. But look, this is going to be a podcast of shits and giggles and probably a hell of a lot of tangents. So I think the only way we could break into this all now is if we hand it over to my pal James to tell you about his life story and how he got to where he is. James?
Wow, what a handoff right there. Life story. Geez, that's going to be a long and sad story. So we'll skip that over. So just to kind of be honest, I'm based here in Vancouver. You're based in Toronto. So we're kind of get two kind of very different perspectives, let's say, on NHL and all stuff like that. So I look forward to kind of bringing my insights. I think I'm the talent. You are the you're the host.
The host.
I'll be thrown under the gun a little more, but I'm ready for it. Let's do it. Prepared.
And obviously, as you can tell through my dulcet tones, I'm English, but I'm wearing my Canada shirt to prove that I have enough sway in the business. But I'll also prove that in how I bore you with some things about the Jets. No, it's not really the Jets. No one cares about the Jets. But
let's do a favor and not talk about the Jets.
We are going to talk about the NHL draft, but we cannot start this very first podcast without talking about the Premier League. And today, I don't know if anyone else saw it. Well, I mean, I know a lot of people saw it, but we'll just fill you in. Tottenham played Man United, and it was I don't want to say bloodbath, but it was an absolute shit show. It was 6-1 Tottenham by the end of it. It was 4-1 in 38 minutes, and everything changed after that red card. But I kind of think it's also a bit of a deceiving scoreline because Man U are obviously not that good when it comes to defense in their central defense, but Spurs really got lucky with that red card today.
Well, to be honest, like when you say Man U's not that great at defense, like when you actually look at last season, I think their defense was their most stable and consistent outlet of the team. Like definitely after the restart, everyone was talking about Bruno Fernandes and their ability to score goals going forward. But I think statistically last season, when Harry Maguire actually made his way into that back four, and you had Wan-Bissaka and you had a healthy Luke Shaw, their defense was actually really strong, right? Like De Gea had a down year, but they were actually one of the best defensive teams in the Premier League.
It just goes to show how far they've fallen now, because you're dealing with a team that is a shambles. Like Harry Maguire, I don't know if this whole incident with the Greek police has kind of thrown him for a spin, but he looks like a shadow of his former self. And you saw that today with, one massive error for the 2-1 goal, where he fouled Kane and then let him pass it and then got mixed up and then pulled Luke Shaw out of the way, and then it was a goal.
But you have to expect that from Harry Maguire, to be fair. Like he's a big rig out there, and he's going to play physically. And the problem that Man United have, to be honest, is when every time I say they need a new center back, they need a fast and mobile center back who can who can cover that space, because Harry Maguire is not fast, but he's solid.
Yeah.
So if he's left to cover too much space, he's just going to make mistakes. And so we see that time and time again. Now he's going to do some boneheaded things, especially last season with that kind of no-look pass and stuff like that. But look, you really need to find him a long-term partner, because you spent, I don't know how much, 80 million pounds for him.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and it's
like you're committed to him now. He's your club captain, but you need a really fast center back who can cover that distance, unless you're going to play back three. And Ole's not going to play back three because he doesn't have wing backs pretty much. So
it's the kind of thing that they've obviously seen. Lindelof doesn't work. Eric Bailly is not working. So they obviously have to go out and make a purchase because they have nothing left. But they've also left it way too late. It's the deadline closes Deadline closes tomorrow. It's a deadline on Monday. So what are they going to do until January? And then you get to January and it's a nightmare of a purchase, like a buying season, because everyone jacks up their prices.
Well, to be honest, I already thought Man United was the biggest loser before I saw this scoreline. Like, how can you be self-proclaimed the biggest club in the world, which I don't think they are. They're probably top three. I still think Real Madrid are the biggest club in the world. But, like, they are the biggest club in England. How you can only they've spent, I think, 39 million pounds for Donny van de Beek. Great player. I think that's actually a good deal. But he's not, like, you didn't need him. He's a great squad player, but he's not a starter for you. And when you had so many other options, like you need a left back, you need a center half, you need a defensive midfield, and you need a right winger. Those are four actual starters that you need. So I great. You got Van de Beek over the line. Perfect. But now you're haggling over the price for Jadon Sancho. That's now gone. You should have put all your eggs in that basket. I think every Man United fan would have been much more content with, look, if they don't get anyone but Sancho, they would have been like, it's still a success.
Absolutely.
Like if they had just gotten him and like left everything else to January next summer, that would have been fine. But Sancho, like when you think this was kind of the golden opportunity for them to get Sancho, because Madrid weren't paying any kind of money this summer. Barcelona weren't really considering any big money bids. And Liverpool weren't considering revamping their whole forward line. But I think in 12 months, or even less than 12 months now, when the transfer market opens next summer, like you got to look at Liverpool. Liverpool's front three are all going to be 29 years old. I bet you that they're like, we could sell Sane probably for like 70 million and then just throw in Sancho. Easy. And then they're set for the next decade, right? Like this was so stupid on Man United's part too. Now, to be fair, they could get the Sancho deal over the line by the time this gets posted, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So
well,
Dortmund, this idea that, we're going to wait them out, I think is just so naive, because as soon as another big club comes in, Liverpool, Real Madrid, as soon as they have money, it's a different story.
They haven't put themselves in a strong place, that's for sure. But the Man United score 6-1 was, so actually 4-1 at halftime was the first time I think in Man U's history they'd ever been down 4-1 at halftime. It only got worse at 6-1, and you thought, that was kind of the end of the surprises, because Liverpool were playing Aston Villa afterwards, and then we get a 7-2 scoreline, and it's Aston Villa who've put 7 past the defending champions and one of the best teams in the world right now of Liverpool. Unbelievable. Like, what is happening in the Premier League today? You had Chelsea actually keep a clean sheet. You had Arsenal and Pepe looked good playing for Arsenal today. You had Man U losing 6-1 and a nightmare of a team. And then Liverpool, and City drew 1-1 with Leeds, and now you had Liverpool a 7-2 demolition. Like, it was unbelievable. And I think it was Ollie Watkins' hat-trick in the first half. Like, it's that kind of speechless event when Liverpool lose 7-2.
Look, Liverpool could lose 7-2 against Man City, and I'd be shocked. The fact that they lost 7-2 to a team that was 1 point above relegation last year is, I don't really know how much analysis we can actually do. I think it's just one of those
I think,
throw up your hands and just like they got him.
And,
like,
and actually,
that's not
I think
an accurate representation of Liverpool. But the one thing I will say though, besides the Chelsea game, because that had a lot of other things going in it. I think their first game against Leeds what was that final? Like 3-3, 4-4? 4-3. 4-3. Yeah. So yeah. I think from that first game, you could kind of see that they were a little susceptible. And they could be broken down a lot easier than they were last year because
absolutely
they weren't really tested, and like they had such a solid back line, but that back line has just played so many minutes now because they don't really have rotation in that squad. But I think that Leeds game was that first kind of inclination that, something like this could happen. I just didn't think something like this would happen to the degree it did, the 7-2 scoreline being.
Yeah, well, I think, you saw, because I agree absolutely with what you said about the back line looks completely different. Not like, obviously the players are the same, but the composition of it, there's something that's missing, and it might be fatigue because they've played so much. It might be because they don't really have any other options outside of those four, because then the quality drops way down. But I also think, like today, Adrian was in goal, and I think there's just a massive difference between that back line when Alisson is there versus when anyone else is there, because there's that, or it's like, you can, I don't want to say it right now because of Chelsea and Kepa, and I'm like one of the last people on Kepa Island, but you see the stability that Alisson gives to a back line. You saw it when he was in Rome, and now you see it in Liverpool. Like it's a massively, massively different lineup when he is there, because you know that you have one of the best keepers in the world behind you. So it gives that kind of sense of calm, But
against, like, for Liverpool, against a team like Aston Villa, they should already have that calm. Like,
well, yeah, they should.
Like, they did have Alisson out for a decent amount, not a decent amount, but a few games out last season, and it didn't slow them down. They had, what was his name? Adrian?
Yeah.
Whatever his name. He played a bunch of games last year, and Liverpool didn't skip a beat.
Maybe this is where Kepa gets sold to Liverpool. It's a little backup deal.
They can have him. I'll half the price. I'll cut any deal you want. Just take him off our hands. Sweet guy, though, I'm assuming. Sweet guy. But
yeah, of course he is.
Just absolute god Just terrible.
Well, I think it's safe to say that the Premier League has produced a hell of a lot in the first, couple match days of games and surprises. But I don't think we're going to get a match day quite like today for a while, with the 6-1, 7-2 scorelines and
even the West Ham win. Who was betting on that? Not me.
Like, they look so good. I do want to get the point in. Obviously, the only reason Aston Villa played so well is because they have Ross Barkley now.
Like, who would have thought he was a game changer? Like, not me. And this is one of the biggest Ross Barkley fans out there. So
it's the kind of thing where you're just like, it's like where you said throw your hands up. You're like, well, Ross Barkley. But also, Ross Barkley plays well against bad opponents. Why does he now suddenly have an actually? Yeah, he had a good game against Liverpool. So maybe it's the pressure. We might. Oh, there was a freeze. See, these are one of the lovely technical difficulties we live with in a COVID time. I also want to say, the internet connection is unstable. Thank you. I also do want to.
So this is your internet.
Yeah, I want to say that for the first time in a long time, I went for a run today, and A, my body's never hurt so much, and B, that's why I have a tickle in my throat. So I'm not dying because of coronavirus. I hope it's just the run and the fact that I'm just fat. So
one run and you're already down for the week.
I told myself, I was like, this is it. This is where it starts, down for the week. I think we now have to move on to the NBA and the NBA finals, because we are seeing I think LeBron James playing the way he is partly because he's LeBron and there's no stopping him. Doesn't matter if he's 35 or not. He is superhuman. But also, I think he's elevated his game since Giannis won the MVP award.
I could see that.
if
Yeah,
that's
I could
possible
see
for
that.
LeBron. I just think, the Heat looked so good coming into this in so many ways, but I don't think they were the matchup that probably would have tested the Lakers the most. I think the Raptors or the Celtics probably would have tested the Lakers more than the Heat are. And I saw just before we did this, let's consult the interwebs. Hey, Allison is facing 4 to 6 weeks out. Side note. That Adebayo and Dragic are both out for Sunday. So if it,
Like, you mean they were already thin at center, so I mean, Bam
exactly
going out is kind of the death blow there. But
you wanted
on
to
to our
make it
Canadian
harder.
boy Kelly Olynyk. Come on now.
You wanted to make it a harder job. You don't have those guys in your lineup. It's are we looking at a sweep? We might be looking at a sweep here.
I don't think you're looking at a sweep.
Well, you think Jimmy's going to go off?
Look, I think when you look at the two teams that they are completely different. LA's very much a two-horse. Just give those two guys the ball.
Yeah.
And Miami's really done it by committee. Like, you say, like, will Jimmy go off? Jimmy's a great player, but Jimmy hasn't been carrying this team. Probably emotionally he has, but I mean, it's very much they've been winning by committee. But I think it's just come down to the fact that LeBron's on a mission, and he's got the best player he's ever played with on the team.
Yeah.
Like LeBron's had good players to play with, great players, I should say, actually. Like Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, going back, he had
D-Wade,
Dwayne Wade.
Yeah.
But no one like just fit as perfectly as AD does. Like,
no,
AD is just like someone who doesn't need the ball at all until he's going to score. And he's a modern big guy who can do everything. Block, rebound, he can face up, he can shoot. Like, he's pretty much unstoppable, and it's the perfect recipe for LeBron, who's the modern day Magic Johnson, right? Who can just
do everything and anything. Yeah,
run everything and just be a physical specimen out there. And it's to the point where he's just bullying their way, right? Like Andre Iguodala 6 years ago, this would be a different series, right? So, but I think it's just one of those things that LeBron is on a mission. Like, I don't think LeBron will be stopped in his attempt to get another championship.
No.
I think he also realizes that it's not guaranteed AD comes back next year. AD is a free agent. And there's always been rumors that AD will go home and play for Chicago. Now, who knows if that's just me throwing up pie in the sky, but who knows, right? So I think LeBron views this as probably his easiest ever chance to get a championship, because I think he was fully expecting to see Kawhi in the final or in the conference finals.
Yeah.
And just by God, Canadian Jamal Murray made sure that didn't happen.
Absolute legend.
He should be named Air Canada, not Andrew Wiggins, but
poor Andrew Wiggins, though. Poor Andrew Wiggins. I feel so bad for him. He needs to go. He's
playing on a great team. He'll figure it out.
Yeah, he just needs to go away. I think they mostly did this year, but he just needs to go away and forget about it. And
forget about what, his entire career?
Hey. Yes.
No, that's a little harsh. That's a little harsh, even though Andrew Wiggins is my favorite player. But okay, so
he had a bad start. He went to the wrong team trying to do the wrong things, and Minnesota didn't turn out for him. And
well, he was drafted, and then he was as a first overall pick. I don't really want to spend too much time on this, but he didn't even get to play for the team that drafted him first overall. And how often does that ever happen? Like, as soon as he was drafted, it was just like, wait the 30 days after he signed his rookie contract, and then you can trade him. And they traded him for Kevin Love because LeBron won championships. So, I mean, you can't blame him, but he went to a team that absolutely just has been a dumpster fire. I mean, the Timberwolves have the first overall pick again this year. So
yeah. So, okay. But moving to the Raptors and what they do with Fred VanVleet, where do you think the Raptors, because they know that they don't really they've hit the end of that window to an extent, in the way that they don't want to spend any money, because I think they want to leave space for the Giannis potluck next year. So they want to leave the room for the max. contract. But where do they go from here now? Because, you know, it looks like Marc Gasol is going to Barcelona, I think, I think Barcelona or Real Madrid. You know, Lowry is still there, but what's Lowry going to do after his contract's run down? Is it worth it to spend that money on VanVleet now? You know,
he'll get a max contract. Someone will give him a max contract, whether that's the Pistons or the Knicks or whoever. I think I don't know the Raptors salary cap structure as well as I should. And I don't know the league rules as much as I should. I don't know if their salary cap can actually go down. I think it can, as in the NHL it can't. But in all honesty, VanVleet was the most important player for the Raptors during this playoff run. He was the guy making the big shots.
Interesting.
I do.
Okay. Okay.
I think Lowry's the leader of the team. And I think Spicy P was invisible. So
yes. That's a whole other thing that we'll talk about at a different
time.
Episode.
No, and for sure. But I think in a perfect world, Giannis would have been a free agent this summer, just because the amount of money that's coming off the Raptors' books. I mean, you got Gasol coming off, and he's not going to come back, and he can go play in Spain, and good for him. I wish him the best. I mean, you got to make a big decision on Ibaka, because I thought Ibaka probably had his best year of his career this year.
Yeah.
And he was very valuable for this team.
In the role he played, though, because he can't get paid what he doesn't get paid what he was making because he wasn't playing the same role he was 2 years ago.
Fair, but I think our best lineup was probably him on the floor as him as the 5 when we went a little small. It exposes you against bigger teams, and we saw that a bit against Boston. But it's one of those things that I don't have an answer for you on what the Raptors should do. I think you need to keep Fred VanVleet, because at a certain point, like, Lowry is going to retire. He's got 1 year left on his deal after this, I think. He got the kind of sweetheart, we love you contract, in the sense that he got, I don't know, $30 million over each year for 2 years, I think. Yeah. So he already got that kind of loyalty contract. He's not going to get that again, because he's going to be, 40, 45 years old. So
and the way he plays as well. Like, how long is that guy with the big badonkadonk going to be able to take charges?
100%. Like he is the greatest Raptor of all time, I think.
Absolutely. And anyone who comes at you and says differently, just
they haven't been watching the Raptors long enough.
And they haven't, and it's not even they haven't been watching it long enough. They haven't looked at what he has done for the players around him. Like, obviously Vince Carter was, is a great. Kawhi with the championship, DeMar DeRozan, all of these guys were great players. Nothing compared to what Lowry has done consistently every year, and how he's, put everything together and made it work while losing big pieces like DeMar, like Kawhi,
From my perspective, I remember when we acquired Kyle. I think we acquired him from the Rockets, and that was the same summer that we had made a big swing to get Steve Nash. And Steve Nash chose the Lakers over the Raptors, which at the time, I don't blame him. I mean, the Raptors weren't in any kind of state to compete.
Yep.
But in my point of view, like, Kyle Lowry's been through the complete growth of this team. He was on the team when they were absolute garbage.
Yep.
And he's been with them while they're the most stable franchise in the league now, right? So they are the kind of like San Antonio Spurs 2.0, in the sense that they've just kind of been a perfectly run organization, which most thanks goes to Masai there. But I mean, like you said before we started this little segment, like, there is going to need to be a turnover. Like, this is kind of the end of a small kind of era, in the sense that we are clearing out a bunch of guys who did win us a championship. I mean, you got to make a decision on OG, but I think you have to keep your options open salary cap wise for Giannis, because I think Giannis is a wild card. He's not a regular kind of U.S. born free agent who wants to go to maybe a big U.S. city and market, like an L.A. or a Chicago or something like that. I think he's a guy who, if Masai is still here, which I'm really hoping that contract gets settled, that has a legit shot of coming north. And I think if you have Giannis and Pascal Siakam in the same team, and you have a viable quarterback pretty much, i.e. Fred VanVleet at the point. Like, who guards Pascal and Giannis? Like, those are the two most versatile kind of 3-4-5s. They can play any position because of their length. Like, it's one of those things that it's a little, it gets you excited thinking about. And as a sports fan, I should know better than to kind of already put him in our jersey. But it's one of those things that you need to keep the option open, because it's one of those things that
you can't not let it go.
Yeah, although the NBA is the only league that you really see change, as in like superstars, like top 5 players leaving, and it's happened actually every year, like Kawhi, AD, KD, LeBron, like they always leave their teams. That doesn't happen in, the NFL or the NHL or any other kind of club like that, or even the MLB. So so I think when Giannis comes up, I think you have to be ready. And if you take a swing and you miss, I mean, you're gonna have a shit ton of cap space to spend on someone else. But yeah, no, I think you need to find a way to kind of keep Fred VanVleet, but I think that'll be very difficult, seeing as I think, the Knicks or, the Pistons, as I said earlier, I think they're going to go all out to kind of get him. Yeah. And they're going to be able to offer him a starting spot as their point guard right away, which, I mean, that's not a selling factor because he's already in our starting 5, but.
Yeah, I think, it's the kind of thing, if Masai is still there, then, you have Masai and Nick Nurse coming in, and that's absolutely the best bet of having Fred VanVleet stay. And, because he's got the family, he obviously likes the city. So you just have to hope that everybody else comes in. Obviously, Nick Nurse is still going to be around with his new contract, but, everybody is still in on the team, and they've set it up, and they're like, listen, Fred, we're going to take a run at Giannis, and he is more likely to come here if you're here, and you are more likely to want to stay in Toronto if you get him. So, like, let's work together. Let's get this done. Let's get it over the line, kind of thing. And I think, Giannis is the perfect example of a guy who would much rather play in a medium-sized. I mean, Toronto is a massive market, but it's, looked on as a medium market because it's not New York, LA, that kind of thing. So I think it's definitely worth it to get Fred to re-sign. Absolutely.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, this is something we won't agree on, though. The NHL draft coming up on Tuesday. The obvious first overall pick is the Quebec god of Alexei. But is Quinton Byfield the best second pick in NHL history?
Okay. I'll try to temper my reaction here. He could be. Like, he's never played a game in the NHL. I'm not going to say like this kid can't be, because he's got all the physical tools to do so. But I mean, like, even saying, is he the best player to ever be available at the second overall pick? Like, that's a no.
Well, no, I'm no, but that's doing it because, then you could talk about like Kucherov, Datsuk, Pasternak, all of these guys who were picked outside of the two. But I'm just saying, like,
no, I mean, like, going into their draft.
So what who are you putting up? You're talking about Line as a no.
Yeah, I think Line was a better prospect than Quinton Byfield for sure. But I think a lot of players have been. I think Jack Eichel would have been a first overall pick in any draft he had come up in, except for his draft and probably the draft after. But even then, I think he would have gone first over Matthews. So, like, it's just one of those things that.
You think he would have? Wait! Time out. You think he would have gone first over Matthews?
Yes. If they had the same, like if Matthews, I think, missed the 2015 draft.
15.
Yeah, 2015 draft. He missed the 2015 draft by like a week, because he's a September birthday, but he's after the cutoff. Like, if Matthews had been available for the 2015 draft, he would have gone third. Which would have been perfect because he would have been picked by Arizona, but that's neither here nor there. But
Gary Bettman didn't fudge enough of the numbers he didn't pull a D Rose and get Chicago to get the pick type thing.
Yeah, no, he should have thought that through a little more. But if Eichel, let's say, was a bit younger, I think he would have, like, Eichel was viewed as a generational player. Matthews was too, but I just think Eichel would have. I just think there was more hype surrounding kind of those two, and the fact that they're both kind of franchise-changing generational players.
Yeah.
Um, I
So,
think Matthews, there was a bit of an unknown because he had gone off to play in Switzerland. I think everyone knew he was amazing. But I
but do
remember
you
he was getting
think?
compared to like a Kopitar at the time, and I didn't think that was at all accurate because I
But
don't think they
wait
play
though.
that similar of a style.
Do you think that um if like do you think Matthews going over to Europe helped his cause, because it's like it's a little bit harder for the average, like obviously the NHL scouts are going to watch anyways, doesn't matter, but like it's a little bit harder to get a gauge on what he is, and the first thing you think of in Europe is like, oh, he's playing against men, he's playing in the professional league versus other 17-18 year olds.
Yeah, true. He wasn't playing in the top European,
No.
like no disrespect to the Swiss league. Let's go with that. But I think there was a lot of unknowns there.
Yeah.
But he was playing under an NHL coach in Mark Crawford, and he was producing. So I think there was a lot of kind of leeway given to that. But I also think a lot of leeway was given because the second and fourth overall picks were the Finnish kids playing in Finland, right? So they were also playing in Europe too. So they were a little more comparable on that sense. Because I mean, like Pierre-Luc Dubois went third in that draft, and he was playing the QMJHL. So he was the only kid in the top four to kind of be playing in the junior league.
Yep.
But yeah, would it have been different if he had done the Jack Eichel thing and played in the NCAA, or if he had stayed in the U.S. men's development, or if he had played in the OHL, but most top American players don't. Who really knows? But yeah, I'm sticking with I think Jack Eichel would have gone second in that draft. But back to Byfield, because we want to loop this all back in for Tuesday. I think he's got every opportunity to be a franchise center. I mean, he's not going to have to be one until a few years into his career, because he's still got Kopitar in front of him if he gets drafted by LA. I think if he goes to Ottawa, there's going to be a lot more pressure because Ottawa has no centers.
Well, he'd have to instantly slot into that. Like everyone would expect him to go straight into the first line.
Yeah, and that wouldn't be fair to him, because he's at the same time, you look at Quinton Byfield and be like, this dude is massive. Like I think he's like 6'4", he's built.
Sounds
but the thing is, he's young, and he only just turned 18 in August, I think. Like he's a younger, like Lafreniere is almost a year older than him when you actually like look at the dates. So Lafreniere is much more prepared to kind of go in and make an impact. I think he's.
But also because of
players.
And also because of Lafreniere as a winger, he doesn't have that responsibility, so it's so much easier to transit. Like the centers who transition are generational talent, like easily generational talents of Crosby, McDavid, like those
guys who make an impact right away.
Yeah, at center. But if you look at everyone else, like the players who make an impact right away, rarely, if ever, centers outside of a couple, handful of guys, because it's so much easier as an NHL player entering the NHL to join as a winger. So he has an easy route that way.
I think you need to look no further than his future teammate Anze Kopitar. Like Anze Kopitar was a great player when he came in, but he wasn't a franchise changing player. He was just a really, really solid two-way center who you could see has potential to be special, but it took him a few years to get there, right? Like it's not everyone can come in and be Austin Matthews and score 4 goals on your first game.
No, yeah, well, that's
it doesn't happen like that, and even I would say like Eichel's a special player, but he's like even now is when he's starting to hit his stride. When he's like being considered like, wow, this guy's a top 10 NHL forward.
And I think Eichel is exactly that. He's definitely taken a while to grow into the NHL, but I think if Buffalo doesn't turn around that team, he is absolutely going to look for a way out of there. And that's why I thought, not that it makes sense for either team really, but it makes sense for Eichel to try and move to somewhere like Winnipeg. Because
I don't think that would be high up on his list.
Well, no, obviously not in terms of the city team, but I think he just wants to get out of Buffalo because it's they've proven that franchise can't really be run in a way that's going to be helping him, really.
I mean, it's all honestly sad, but I don't really care. Buffalo is just one of those teams that it's like I don't know what to think, because there's been times in the past few years that they've had a good stretch of games and everyone's like, wow, Buffalo's putting it together. And I'll even look at the roster and I'll be like, there's some players I really like on this roster. But every year, like clockwork, it fizzles and dies for some reason. And I think when you look at it going into next year, they have pretty much no one signed for next year, except for, Eichel and Skinner and a few guys like that. But I don't see a long-term future for Eichel. I think this really is Buffalo's last kick at the can with him. I think this season is kind of the last. And, I do have visions of him playing for Boston. I think that should be Boston's long-term play, because I think
a homecoming of sorts.
Bergeron aren't getting any younger. And he would just be, I mean, he's hometown kid going back to play for the Bruins. I have nightmares about that. So
well, you think of that line, like if you think of the Bergeron, Marchand, Pasternak line, it could get any scarier. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna just trade out one of the best two-way centers in Bergeron of all time
and put him on the second line.
We'll put him on the second line and put Jack Eichel up top instead. Oh, whoops.
Yeah, and you look at Boston's salary cap structure in the sense that they don't really pay anyone big money.
No.
They're not really committed. They have a lot of movable contracts. So if they really wanted to make a big splash, they could. That's why you hear rumors about them going after Ekman Larson, who's at 8.25. I mean, it's not too much of a stretch to think that they could afford Eichel at 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, obviously this was just me kind of spitballing, but I kind of see, a Boston or even a Rangers that were rumored to be in for him, making a lot of sense. I think going back to kind of the Sabres thing, I think it is their last kick of the can, because I think he is one of those guys who would force his way out. I see kind of as a Danny Heatley personality, in the sense that he'll just want to go.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that I don't get that. Like, if things got really bad in Edmonton, I still don't think Connor would ever ask to leave.
No,
I think he's just one of those kids that will just like suck it up and be the best player on a crappy team.
Yeah, I think
like a Mike Trout situation.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's that kind of generational talent where it's like, I know I could, if I wanted to force through a move, I could go to any team, because any team would take me and just, change everything up for me to come. But the Mike Trout analogy is perfect, because, you got to feel bad for Mike Trout, hasn't been to the postseason in 6 seasons.
He's been in the postseason once in his career.
Like, yeah, but I think it hasn't happened in 6 seasons, and like they missed again.
We were probably in elementary school.
Like, I feel so sorry, because he is just an astronomically talented player who might never get to go anywhere else because of the contract he signed, and he's the best player, and what's going to happen. And Connor McDavid is the same thing, although I think there's a chance that McDavid might move in a couple years. And, because I think he obviously wants to win, but there's no way, unless Edmonton completely changes it, and they, it's not like you can look at the Sidney Crosby and the John. I was gonna say the Taves and Kane situation in Chicago, but those contracts were all on it was just a completely different world. So it was much easier to build teams around them, and that's why you didn't see players like Kane, Taves, Crosby, Malkin, those guys moving and forcing moves, because it was easy to build a team around them because the contracts were just smaller. But now that contracts are $10, $12, $13 million, I think it makes it harder to build a team around a player.
my counterpoint to that, though, I agree 100%. But the examples you gave, in the sense that Malkin, Crosby, Taves, Kane,
Yep.
they signed their contracts, their big contracts, after they had been successful. Like they had
also true
cup winning success, and so they felt a lot more comfortable being like, there was never that burden on their shoulder of being like, if I stay here and nothing ever changes, I'm never going to win a cup. Like they just didn't have that thought process, because by the time Taves and Kane signed, they had 3 Stanley Cups. So I think they were just like, show me the money.
Yeah,
you know,
and
let's stay with one team. Let's be a Hall of Famer. We're with the original 6 team with great history, and they already have 3 cups. Like, what more was there to prove?
And they're loved, absolutely adored in that city, so they don't need to change it up and go,
Yeah, I think like Connor McDavid's never gonna have to worry about money in his life, and I think at a certain point he'll have to think about, what does he want more, the legacy of staying in Edmonton, and look, this could all turn around and Edmonton could put it together and win a cup, and I'm all for that. But I think at a certain point he's going to have to start thinking about, am I, because he's coming into his prime. Like, he is coming into his physical dominating prime.
Yep.
If he gives that to Edmonton and it doesn't work out, I think he has to seriously question if he wants to win a cup.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the sense that, look, pie in the sky, of course, as a Leafs fan, everyone's going to call us really crazy.
Yeah, it's coming up.
There's always been kind of a maybe one day, right? And the only other player that really, there was 2 players that kind of had that, Stamkos to a degree, but but Tavares was always the guy. Like, ever since he was in minor midget,
it was always,
and it was always, it was always, will Tavares come home and play for the Leafs at one point in his career? It was always that was the coming home story over Stamkos. But I do always feel the sense that, because I remember watching the draft lottery, the 2015 draft lottery, when it was Connor McDavid, and Edmonton won it, and I'll still remember this to my day, the walk that he had from studio to studio at the sports set.
You could see it,
and it was just, I've never seen someone more unhappy.
Yeah, it was just, I don't think he looked unhappy. He just looked dejected. He was just thinking, really just thinking, of all the teams, it's not that Edmonton was a bad option, because they had good players around him, but then they just got rid of, can you think of how much better it would be if he had Taylor Hall? I mean, different with Draisaitl now, but Taylor Hall passing him the puck.
Look, that was a bad trade for a different time. Though, if they really wanted to, they could bring Taylor Hall back if they wanted to. But shed some salary cap space there. But no, I think when you look at that draft, I think it would have been a lot more sad if he had gone to a Buffalo or an Arizona. I think it is nice that he is playing on a Canadian team, and he is kind of in that kind of shadow of the great one, but. So I think there's always kind of been that.
Were you talking about Sam Gagner just then?
Don't do that, Sam Gagner. Don't do that. Come on, I
love Sam Gagner. He had the greatest night. 7-point night, legend.
Oh yeah, I think it may have been more, actually. I think it was like an 8.
Could have been 8. Could have been 8 points. I take it back, Sam. I take it back.
Yeah, I mean, how could you do that to Sam? But no, I think kind of, I think there will always kind of be, as us Leaf fans, but also just. There will always be intrigue about won't he? Connor McDavid, what he'll want to do, as long as Edmonton's not winning. So I think from that perspective, it's interesting to look at.
Okay, so now just on Lafreniere, McDavid is the last real generational talent with McDavid and Crosby. Do you think Lafreniere is going to be the best first overall pick since McDavid?
No, because I think Austin Matthews is a top 5 player in the league, and honestly, to everyone listening, I don't think that's being like Toronto bias. I truly think that when Austin Matthews is on the ice and when he's in the zone, I think there's few players who can dominate the game the way he does.
Yeah, I agreed.
I see it as in like no one can dominate the game right now like a Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon. I think those guys are in a step above just because I think their speed sets them apart. But I think there's no one who has kind of the physical domination that Austin Matthews has. Like it is
And
just so reminiscent of a younger Malkin.
but
And that's all I see.
in a weird way though, because he's not like he's, you say like he's a physical powerhouse. He is a massive dude and doesn't use his body in a traditional hockey sense. He uses it to shield the puck and hold people off of him like no one else can, and and just control play without having to pull an Ovechkin and crush someone in the boards. He does it by beating them with his stick handling and then beating him by sticking his butt out and keeping them away.
Yeah, as I said, like it is so much like a younger Malkin, and and his ability to just dominate the game. But so kind of going back to Lafreniere, I think he has all the potential in the world to be, a first line left winger. But in a day and age where it's like, is he going to be the best since McDavid? Well,
it's hard to say.
I mean, like that's going to be a tough mountain to climb, especially when you're going up against Matthews, who's a franchise center. But even then, like looking at like if Dahlin turns into what he could be, a number one defenseman who can do everything is
worth their weight in gold.
Pretty hard to find. Nico Hischier, I think he has the opportunity to be better than him. But I think Nico Hischier is just one of those guys that he's like a Swiss Army knife. Pardon the pun, but
seriously.
Yeah, very clever. But he's just like, he's a great two-way center, but I don't think he's never going to dominate the game like a Matthews or a McDavid. I think even Jack Hughes has a better kind of opportunity to kind of be a little more kind of dynamic and kind of dominating. But, that's who knows if you'll get that from Jack Hughes. I think he was rushed into the league. I didn't think he was a child when they put him in, like just physically he wasn't.
He looked like
he looked like a high school child. So and all the skill in the world, but it is funny. Like, he can dominate the U.S. men or the U.S. program when he's going up against kids his own age, and even physically demanding kids at that age are still malleable to being dangled around. But you're not doing that around a Shea Weber. Like you're not doing it around men who can skate, who are twice as strong as you.
And who've just played for longer. Like it was a disservice to him to just throw him in there.
Yeah, you're not doing anything they haven't seen before. So But I still think he has all the potential in the world. But back to Lafreniere, I think the Rangers are going to get a big piece. I'll be interested to see what the Rangers do. I think they have some pieces that need to stay and some pieces that need to go. But kind of like we have talked about kind of Lafreniere and kind of Byfield. I think the real value of this draft is going to be in that kind of 3 to kind of almost 12.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could probably push it to 15. Yeah, it's deep, but it's also got everything. Like you have a goaltender in the top 15. You have defensemen, right-handed, left-handed defensemen. You have scoring wingers. You have dynamic scoring wingers. You have centers. Like you have a little bit of everything, and that doesn't always happen. So it'll be very interesting to see kind of what Ottawa does. I think their pick is guaranteed at 3. I think they're taking who doesn't get picked at 2, which is either Byfield or Tim Stützle.
Yeah.
I think Detroit's the first wild card. I've probably read 15 different mock drafts, and they probably have 10 different players going that slot. So I think Detroit will be the first one that kind of sets the tone for the draft. Do they go defenseman? Do they go center? Do they go winger? Like I could see.
Well, they need everything. So they could really pick whatever they wanted. They need it all.
I mean, if they go Drysdale, that would be an interesting case because they're going to spend another really high pick on a right shot defenseman because they did it last year, and I remember that was kind of the surprise of the draft when they picked Moritz Seider, the German. But I mean, he looks like a stud. Like, and they already have the other guy, Philip Hronek, who's probably looking and projecting to be a perfect second pair right shot defenseman. So, I mean, you could take Drysdale and have an absolutely stacked right side of your defense.
Yep.
Or you could try to, really help out your forward core. And really, when you're picking at 4, you really need to hit on it. And you need to get, I always hate to say franchise changing, but you need skill that you just can't get elsewhere in the draft. Like finding a Braden Point or Nikita Kucherov later is just, it's so rare and it's so hard and it's so like statistically improbable to happen.
Yeah.
So you need to hit on your high picks. And a part of me really does think that they need to go forward here, because they just don't have a lot of high-end forwards. Philip Zadina can turn into one, but, he's still young. But besides that, Manth is a nice player, but he's not a franchise player. I think Dylan Larkin's a great player, but he's not a first-line franchise center. I think on a great team, he's an elite number 2.
Yep. Fair enough.
So I think it'll be very interesting to see. But I think Detroit is one of those teams that, they can kind of go anywhere with that. And then Ottawa will have the second pick at forward, or the second
of their picks
selections at 5. And honestly, if I were to be any GM in the league, I'd want to be Pierre Dorian, because I think this is going to be probably the next. It's going to be stressful, but I also think it'd be the most fun. Because you could literally do anything. Like you have an opening at goaltender, you have an opening for your entire lineup. It is almost like being on NHL like 20 and just like
absolutely
creating your own team.
Yeah, you can actually just have fun, draft a dynasty or trade and draft a dynasty. But coronavirus. So I was thinking, in a way to wrap it up, do you have a sleeper pick or someone that you think is going to not, like, the average bear doesn't know anything outside Lafreniere and Byfield, really. So who is your sleeper pick for this draft? Because you can call it now and it'll live in infamy because the internet will keep hold of this forever.
A funny thing is I always do a sleeper pick and I've been right a lot of the time. Like I remember when Jacob Chikrin followed and I'm like, that dude's going to be a franchise defenseman. And he hasn't been up until last year, and now he's taken Oliver Ekman-Larsson's spot as their best defenseman.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember when, everyone called Barzal, so I'm not going to take any special credit for that, but I remember Barzal falling, and I'm like, that kid's going to be legit.
He's a stud.
But
yeah.
It is funny, anytime player falls, they usually end up being pretty good. Because I remember, when Philip Forsberg fell, and he fell, who was it, to Washington. And just the players who fall usually turn out pretty good. But back to my, who do I think is a sleeper pick? Oh boy, I think Hendrix Lapierre. I think he would that's probably the most commonly said sleeper pick for all the sports guys out there.
Yeah.
He's a center. He was at the start of the year. He was a top 10 pick, but just injuries have kind of derailed him. And he's got neck and head issues. But I think he's got all the talent that if he's healthy, he's a sleeper pick. But I'll go a little further down the draft, and I'll stick my neck out just a little bit, and I'm going to say Ryan O'Rourke.
Okay,
from the Greyhounds. I think I don't think he's going to be a franchise player. So let me state that before I say anything else. But I think he's a complete defenseman, a complete left shot defenseman who I think will go late first round, early second round. But I think could be one of those guys who kind of turns into a really, really solid top 4 defenseman. So I'll say Ryan O'Rourke for my kind of more sleeper pick.
All right. See, that was a perfect way to end the breakdown. Well, I almost forgot the name of what we were calling this. Really, the name is in flux, is what we're saying. Is that if you, all of our massive legions of fans, you figure out a good name, we'll take it under consideration. I will say that a friend of mine, Jordan, did the graphic. So thanks to her for doing that. And if you listen to other things I've done, I'm actually much better at doing transitions and intros and extras than I have been today. I'm going to blame it on my run because my body has no idea what's happening on the inside right now. I think my one lung is still up on the other side of my body, even though it's your back. See, I didn't even know anatomy enough to know where the hell my lung is, but it's definitely missing. So we'll wrap it up for today. Little short, little sweet, a good start, kinda. And I think that's all we got. Maybe we'll have music the next time we do this. Who knows? Could be a stretch.
I wouldn't hold my breath on that. That seems like a lot of editing for you.
Yeah. Well, with my fire YouTube channels, obviously I'm about to shamelessly plug myself at Olly Smith on YouTube, which actually is where this is going to. But
that's going to be confusing for your 25 followers who thought it was all about Chelsea, but we'll wrap this up now. This is dragging on. You can edit this.
No, this is obviously staying in because we are an unedited podcast. So you get the real vibes and the real information coming at you straight from Toronto and Vancouver, from the attic and the living room.
This is actually the home office, but thank you.
This has been the Breakdown with James and Olly. We'll hit you up once a week. We look forward to it. Catch you later, folks. Well, now I have to figure out how to stop recording.
This will be edited.
So now this is edited. Goodbye.